Hi, and welcome back. I know it's been a while. My couple of weeks off turned into a couple of months. I guess that's just how things go. Now I'm going to be honest and forthright here. I have a hard time making myself get back into it because it's so much work and I don't really get much accomplished when I'm doing it. The YouTubers that are crafting and sewing and such, that's pretty much their living. If they were trying to make a living off the sewing, they probably wouldn't get a whole lot done. Or maybe they're just so much better at it than I am. Probably that. I mean, I'm the first to admit I am lacking in a few skills here, okay? But I am working on a very slow process. I'm sorry if that camera keeps going in and out of. It's on auto, and I don't remember it doing it before. This is my webcam above my head, which means I have to, work really hard at trying to get the volume to not be really. It just screams. I've tried everything to turn it down, and then it's too quiet. You can't hear it. Anyhow, so I have always wanted to make a cathedral quilt, and I was going to do it the old-fashioned way, but not by hand. Just saying, these hands, they're in support gloves for a reason. My arthritis has been really kicking my butt of late. Didn't help that I used a pattern I found online to make a sweater, made all the pieces, went to put it together, and I thought, I kept when I was doing it, I kept thinking, this just doesn't seem right, but it wasn't clicking. What was wrong? I'm knitting and watching TV. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not good at concentrating on one thing, I guess. I go to sew it together. They did not put it, when it says to sew the shoulder seams together, there are no shoulder seams for the front pieces. The panels for the front of the cardigan, yeah. And I was like, what? So I kept contemplating how I could make it work, and finally I went, just rip it out. You're going to have to rip it out. When you have arthritis in your hands, knitting can sometimes take a while, and you'd think the bigger needles would actually be easier. No, I had a hard time. I kept dropping those needles, and it was a nightmare. Anyways, so then I decided I would crochet one. And I made my own pattern. I mean, I've been crocheting since I was 10. I'm not real great at following the pattern for crochet. I don't know why. I lose my place all the time. So just drawing out like a chart is best for me. So I did that, and I started, and I got halfway through one sleeve and went, oh, this is why I don't crochet wearables. It's like cardboard, and I don't like that stiff. I like a little more flowy to it, so I prefer knitted garments. So I ripped that out, and I don't even like the yarn anyways. It's bright pink. Barbie, remember last year? And I make all these hats to donate, so I bought all this pink yarn, which was a bit of an investment, but I'm gonna, spend it on chocolate anyways, right? And I made, I don't know, 4 or 5 out of the pink and couldn't look at it anymore. So when I wanted to make a sweater, I had plenty of pink. I started a pink. Oh, it was killing me. Oh, it's hard on my eyes. I don't know what to tell you, but nope. I've always been called stubborn. Decided it's going to work. So I had my great niece over, and she sits back here in my sewing crafting room with me during the day and gets to play with glitter and glue and just have a ball. And I think mostly she played on her tablet, and we talked a lot. Well, I listened a lot. It was fun. I had so much fun with her. Thank you, Lucy, for visiting. But I was moving things around so that I could make her own desk space, and realized I had printed out a sweater pattern, knit, and set it off and then buried it with fabric. Voila! I have another pattern to start. So last night I started it. It's a waffle stitch, and I have tried this before, and I always lose count and end up messing it up and getting upset and just ripping it out. But this time I'm being careful. I'm double checking. So far I've got this much done, so we'll see. You know, it may never get finished. I just gave my niece the poncho I started with no pattern. Just decided I'm going to make this. It took me 3-4 years before I actually gave it to her. It was going to be a birthday present. Yeah. Hey, I never said what birthday. So, this is an In the Hoop Cathedral window quilt. This is not this is my design. It's not my concept. I saw a quilting video because I was trying. The one book I got rid of was a book that taught you how to do different. I mean, it was like teaching you how to quilt kind of a thing, and it had particular patterns in it, like a Lone Star, and that was the first one I did, and I did almost all of it by hand, you know, the quilting part, and then said, okay, because those needles are really tiny and hard to see, and finished it out by the machine. But the piecing work was done by machine. Anyhow, still have it, love it, so proud of that. You know, at a certain point in your life, you decide you're going to do it by the rules. And I'm not really good at that, but I kept that book, and I'm pretty sure that the very last pattern was Cathedral pattern, a Cathedral window pattern. I'll spit it all out. And I have hunted high and low and cannot find that book. I went, oh, I donated it. I get cleaning and I get carried away and I donate all this stuff and then later wish I had it. So I went online and was looking up, how do you do the traditional cathedral window? Okay, that takes a lot of fabric. And as it is, I had to buy a bolt of the white muslin to do this. And you know, I'm on disability. There's just no spend extra money. I have to be careful. I do sell things to get spending money, that kind of stuff, but there's not a lot of extra money. So I decided I had to find a more economical way of making this quilt. And I was watching some videos, and this woman had a template for a circle, and it was huge. Compared to her hands, it must have been this big. But what she did was she did circles, and like once the top circle was one color and the bottom circle was another color of fabric, and then you fold it in and you'd see that's how you had the color, you know, a different color on the inside, kind of a thing. And yes, it definitely looks more like orange peel, which is a quilt pattern that is similar to Cathedral window, but it's like long, oval, pointed. Oh, I can't think of what they're called. Never mind. Orange peels. How's that? But you know how when you slice up the orange and you end up with those like that? That's what this is going to actually look like. More like an orange peel, I guess you'd call it. But online, nowadays, they are all calling it Cathedral window, and fine. I went, oh, I can make a pattern for my embroidery machine. I just love playing with that machine, and I have sons that don't want anything from the embroidery machine. Never have. So, I have to find ways of using it. This is one that you will see after this conversation, stitched out. All right. Now, I had cut out some wash away and done it. So yes, you can do it on wash away. Wash away can get quite expensive, and I was running through it rather quickly, and I went, yeah, I have to do this economically. Let's find something less expensive. So I had this little bit of tearaway left. This is 1.8 ounce. They call it medium weight. Really not all that medium weight. So I tried this out. This worked really well. I bought a roll. It was like $20 with taxes. Sorry, my hands. I just never know what to do with my hands. And then I sat here and I trimmed it up for the 6x6 hoop. And I'll tell you, I did try ordering some that was already cut, and it said that it was big enough for a 6x6 hoop. It would work. It was perfect for 4x4 and 6x6, and they were cut 8x8. But your hoops are oblong. They're rectangles, not squares. And the ends just wouldn't catch. Like one would, but the other wouldn't. I could not. There was no getting it evenly caught, because then neither end would be caught. I tried a couple of times and I went, yeah, I want a refund. Can I get a refund? And they were very nice and they gave me a refund. I shipped it back to them. Very kind. I appreciate that. So I ordered a roll and I cut my own. Not a big deal. I'm sitting here watching YouTube videos on my computer, and I would roll it out on my mat. That's why I have this mat. And, you know, you do that while you're just doing nothing. I have to have my hands busy most of the time anyways. Just like when I cut the circles, voila, I end up having them all cut. I did find a supply on Amazon that had 600 10x12. You do waste quite a bit, but it'll fit your 6x10 hoop also, is what it's supposed to be for. So it should. And it works out to 9 cents a sheet, whereas I think this had worked out to, yeah, I'll figure it out and put it up there or something. It was more. I think it was 13 cents per sheet. So that would be better, because I only got like 210 out of this roll, but that is 600, and that was $10 more than this. I don't know. You can do the math. So I'm thinking that would be a better idea. Now to take I've got it stuck on. This is double-sided tape that I bought on Temu. Takes 2 weeks to get here. It's not a big deal. I can remember when mail order was really mail order. You had a catalog. I loved it when it got to be where there was an 800 number and you could call it instead of having to mail everything in and with a check. But those always took 2 to 3 weeks. You know, so this is not new to me. How's that? My generation. But anyhow, it has little threads through it. It's really, really sticky. And I cut it to fit on here. I cut it in half for these strips and in quarters for this side. So the one thing is these little pieces here, the tips sometimes want to come off. And it is so sticky, I can't leave it for any length of time. I don't rub it hard to get it to stay on. And in the beginning, I sit and I do this on I'm always wearing fleece. Because of my condition, I want soft clothing, and so I've always got fleece wear on, or knit wear at least. And I sit there and tapped it on there just to get a little bit of fibers into it so it wouldn't permanently stick. But then it's as simple as, I'm going to show you how to do one. Let me get this out of my way. And I pull around the edge. I figure this is pretty lightweight. It'll probably wash out too. I don't know. Haven't tried. The quilt is for me. Maybe if it was for someone else, I would worry about it. I'll be testing it when I wash mine. It's one of the first things I do. So I do the outer edge. Now, I have multiple pairs of scissors here. And I will cut my little knots. I know my machine makes these. It just needs a good cleaning, I think. I need to take it in. Oh, if you hear my cat crying outside of the door, just ignore him. He has gotten so overweight because there's 4 people in this house and he gets fed too often. One son will, for the most part, say, you don't need all that soft food, and give him just a tiny little bit, but he still gives him some food. So, yeah, he thinks I need to feed him. I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, and he decided if I'm awake, I should be scooping food. And I shut the door on him. He can't even come back here and bug me. Ha ha. But I just kind of slide this around the outer edge, and that's the placement stitches, you know, to hold that in place. Doesn't even matter. If I snip them and cut them, I've got, come on, there. It'll kind of catch, the threads kind of catch up, and that's when I clip. When it won't slide anymore, I clip. And I pull these out. Now, we're not going to go through all of that madness because I want to show you a little bit of each thing. I take pinking shears. If you don't have them, that's okay. Absolutely not necessary. And you could trim it down however you want. But what I'm doing is just going through that first part. And the reason that I pulled that section out first is because trying to get this little bit out here, it would be really difficult. So I trim all the way around it that way. But most of this, once you've pulled that thing out, this is already pulled loose. And if it's not, just taking some scissors and kind of sliding them through, see, boom, and then you'll pull that out, and this, and I do them in sections. I'll do a pile of these while, you know, playing Sims 4. I do love my Sims 4. I don't know what to tell you. I've been playing it since 2000 when I turned 40. My sons, well, technically, I guess I bought it for myself, but they got me Sims, the original Sims, for birthday present. Mom, you'll love this game. And yeah. So my addiction is their fault. Anyhow. And then we will turn it. And I'm going to show you that in a splice, okay? Because I'm going to turn off the camera and whittle all this down. This is wash away. It actually doesn't tear very easily. See? So I was rather glad to give it up because using it, now, yeah, I could wet it and it'll just dissolve and go away. But these sections are so nice and big. The few I did do, I wanted to save those so that I could just use it in spots. Even though this is a lower kind, I'm going to give it a shot for when I'm embroidering on top of, say, a sweatshirt or something. Oh, I'm always wearing big sweaters and stuff, and then I get food and everything else. But with this one, because it's wash away, you can just trim around the outer edge and leave all the rest. Okay? If you don't cut this during the process, you need to take and pull these two sections apart. And then that you can pinch this one and know you've only got it. Put a little cut in it, and then, you know, cut your hole. You do not have to make a little box for stitching around it. I did it because it makes me feel better about it not fraying as much underneath when I'm washing my quilt. So this quilt will be used a lot. Now let's get over there and I will show you the stitching of it. You can always, you know, bypass that. If you're still here, thank you. Love it when you guys stick around. Anything you're interested in seeing, I would love it if you left a comment down below. Told me, hey, have you ever tried? Because if I haven't, I probably would like to. I mean, I would love to get a laser cutter. I know they're called laser printers, but that's not accurate. It drives me nuts. And I have a laser printer. It's different. It prints with toner. Anyhow, yeah, that's out of my price range, but that would be so cool, wouldn't it? So I can't do those, but sewing I can do. So if you have anything that you're interested in, you can always put it in a comment, and we'll see if we can't fulfill that dream. Now let's show you how I stitched it out. Okay, I have hooked up my microphone, and I'm praying that all of this works this time because I've done this and it hadn't worked. This might be why I take months off around the holidays, huh? All right, so I have stuck double-sided tape on the back of my hoop, and then I pressed it onto tearaway. The first part that stitches will be the placement line for my circle. Now, when I created this, I set it at a 9 for the length of the stitch. Default is an 8. I just a hair longer. Try to get this as central as possible, as long as it is covering all those lines. I cut my circle bigger. The 6-inch circle, but I actually cut it a hair bigger. When you're done, it's only 5.5 inches. So the stitch line is actually just under, because this is a 6x6 hoop, and you can't do 6 inches in a 6x6 hoop. It's kind of deceiving. So I think it's 5.85 is actually the size of my circle, something like that, which is fine. It still works. Smaller seam, because the inner circle is still the same. I just had to keep shrinking down the outer. So this is going to stitch it into place. And the reason that I added that stitch line is because I had one shipped on me. Now, as you can see, I have gotten it off center, but it's still not a big deal. I did cut the circle bigger. Some of them are kind of lopsided, as this one is. Now we'll stitch a little rectangle, and this is my cut line for turning it. I added that just so I would feel better about it, because I'm cutting the fabric and then leaving it there. unsecured. This is cut. Now placing down the line for the inner box. Try and keep this in camera and see it. I cut my squares of batting a little bit narrower. I would not recommend a high loft. This is cotton batting, nice and thin, or even say an iron-on fleece that you would use in bag making or whatever. When I make my sons, I'm going to use that, I think. Maybe I'll test it first. Tested this. Then we place our square over it. I used scraps, so like you can see this little corner is missing here. That's all right. Now, it's actually going to do 2 stitch lines, and I did that because some of my fabrics are quite thin, and I found they were fraying a bit, and I was uncomfortable with it. I was afraid over washings it might come loose, so I added a zigzag line. You could always leave it off on yours. It's not hard to make these patterns. It's just a series of circles and squares. Now, the reason I wasn't worried about that being gone is because I'm going to go in here and I'm going to trim these little corners off. And I'm doing this. You can do it after it's sewn together. They'll pull right out of the seam. But they get sewn into the seam and then they show on the outside when you're folding it over. Now, this is a process. There is no fast way of making these quilts. This just happened to be a way for me to use my embroidery machine to do it. And I thought, yay, fun. It's going to take a long time for me to do all of these. I'm just making a lap quilt, and I need 228, something like that, 238 of them. And that's for a small one. But this way, once and done, it's got its batting on the inside. So now I'm going to take this off and get to that little thing and cut it. I like to cut it now. You can cut it afterwards, but I'm going to cut mine now. It just takes some very pointed scissors to poke a hole, or, seam ripper. I just simply couldn't do that in camera. I have to get it over underneath me. But see, now it's cut between the sewing lines, and I just feel like it's a little more secure. Let me get my top circle. I have cut stacks of circles out, and I have them in a roll around tray that is my project cart at the moment. And as you can see, the one underneath was cut so much larger than it should have been. And that's, like I said, you could cut squares. As long as it's covering that stitch line, you're safe, right? Now it's going to do a triple stitch around. And the reason I used a triple stitch is I started out with just a stitch line, but when you're pulling the tearaway out, sometimes it pulls the stitches loose. They're going to be sewn over again. I mean, they're going to be secure for the most part, but I wasn't real happy with that. I sat down at the sewing machine and sewed over the seams on those, and I changed it to a triple stitch. Now it doesn't pull out, no holes when you're pulling the tearaway out. And that's it sewn. All right, here's one I turned, and I forgot to do the trimming with the pinking shears. I wanted to show you it's not that big a deal if you don't want to do that. I started doing it just because some of my circles I had cut quite big. If you're going to do, say, a square of fabric down and then trim around the circle, why trim again? So yeah, it turns. It's no problem. And that's the hole you turn it through, see? So it's not, I mean, whenever you turn something, starting it is usually the most difficult part. I just made sure that my hole was big enough that I could get both thumbs through there, kind of a thing. And this tiny little bit back here doesn't smooth out quite as well as the rest. And you can use your finger to go along that seam. You could use, I have this boning whatever tool. Yes, I do paper stuff too. Actually, I'm going to get rid of my paper stuff. I even took pictures of my Gemini. I have that cutting machine. They have come out with the 2. They have upgraded it. Actually, it took them a very long time to get around to doing a version 2. I guess they decided sales had dropped or something. Anyhow, I'm going to sell all that stuff because I really prefer to sew. So that'll give me more money for sewing projects, right? Alright, you do end up with some threads. I don't worry about it too much if they're really long. This one happens to do quite long threads. But it's all turned out. I ran through the seams, and then I prefer a steam iron, but this was close for the video, so I'm going to use this. The steam makes it set up better, is all. It's like really crisp with a little bit of steam zapped on there. But I give it a little iron, and then that under, the first one I did is a little bigger, and that's a good fold line, so I can see those corners, and I just use my fingernail to kind of tuck a little. I'm going ahead, as you can see, this is my box. I finally got smart and counted them last night. I'm up to 73. Got a ways to go there. My great niece was, I'm going to make her a quilt. She has changed the colors of her room. And she had, pink had been her favorite color for, the first 10 years of her life. So I had made her a pink quilt with Minnie Mouse on it. And unfortunately, she's never been a real Disney person. I'm not that she doesn't love Disney World, that kind of thing, but as far as being in love with Disney product kind of a thing, not really. I don't know, but I thought every little girl, loves this, and it was bright pink, and she loves the bright pink, so I made her that quilt. She liked it. She kept it on her bed, but she's changed her color things now. So she's got this new character that she would like on it. See, without the steam, I can still see some wrinkles on the back. Not that big a deal, I guess. But I fold all those pieces in, get them how I want them, iron it from the back. And now I do 8 to 15 at a time. And then I stack them, and the hot one always goes on the bottom, and that helps, that pressure helps, keep those crisp while they're cooling. Anyways, I asked her, is there a different quilt that you would like, and what would you like on it? And she told me, and I said, okay, I'll add it to the list for this year. I made myself, in January, the beginning of the new year, I decided, let's see if I don't trim off my corners a little bit. After you fold them, they kind of, and I just don't care for it myself. I mean, I guess if you like it, you should leave it. You do you, I'll do me. And yesterday she asked me when I was going to start hers. I said, honey, you're probably not going to get that till the end of the year. She was so bummed. So today, after I finish this little bit of a video, which is, going to take hours, I think I'm going to at least because it's going to have a giant applique in the center, I'm going to create a panel in the center with a character that she asked for. And then the outside of that panel will be quilt. And it'll probably be along the lines of, say, plaid, make the fabric look plaid. I'm not sure yet. I will mess around with it. But as for the center panel, since I know exactly what she wants, I can get that done up. And it really, I kind of cheat the way I do it, I guess you could say. I don't draw that well. So I just take the picture and enlarge it to the point in Publisher that it can make a poster the size that I want the panel to be, and then print it out, tape them all together, and voila, I've got the picture. Now I just need the sections, and I cut the sections from that. Same way I'm going to do a quilt for my grandson. That one is an ambitious project, though, and I have to admit I backed off on the idea a little bit because it might be beyond me. Let's say that. My confidence level dropped when I started plotting it out, and I decided we'll just wait until I've had a few successes. I recommend you have a couple of little project boxes. See, so I figured out what I needed. Now, if you have memory problems like me, you're definitely going to... Oh, by the way, I got these for like $18, and of course right afterwards it dropped down to $12.71 or something like that on Amazon. Guys, they are still considered fabric scissors. They've got a huge opening, which one of the reviews said, ooh, the opening is way too big. Well, when your knuckles are starting to grow, mine are not bad. I got a nice little knot on my thumb that's been growing over the last decade. The rest of them, I don't think are, they're just starting to enlarge. They're just more painful than anything. But lots of room in there, and they cut like butter. Love them. So I draw these circles out. I made myself a circle. Problem with chipboard is, as you run in that pin around it, it's slowly getting smaller and smaller. So I had my son look for something that would be the right size. This was almost the right size. It was just a hair too small. So he stole my other son's coffee can lid. He put the coffee in an airtight container. It was almost empty. And I trimmed it down just enough that I can still fit, because when I lay the fabric out, it's folded. I'm just rolling the bolt down. And I'll show this in another video, maybe. I don't know. But I draw around one, then the other. Then I have to kind of move this one up slightly. But you can get like 3 across on a little arc. With the other bit of the brim on there, I could not. I just couldn't. So I was wasting a whole bit of fabric. So I trimmed it down. It's still bigger than my my placement circle, but not that much bigger, and I can still not waste as much fabric. I actually have 2 running totals here. Just saying. Lucy wrote that for me when I first started cutting my circles. I had figured out what I wanted with the 4-inch squares on a diagonal, blah, blah, blah. I'll need 238 squares, 238 battings. So if you're going to do, say, 1 color circle on the top so that it's on the inside, you just want to do circles, you would do half of them in 1 color and half of them in the color that's going to be your framing. You know, the window sash, that kind of thing. I'm doing a square in the middle and using the white fabric for all of the rest, simply because I had all that scrap blue and I had already cut it out. So I just devised a way of still using it. And as I cut my circles, I added them up, and then I realized, you know, I need to know how many I have left. So this is how many I've cut thus far. This is how many I still need. And I know it's a redundancy you don't have to do, but I do suggest you keep some notes in your box where you're going to throw your circles. This is a friction pin. It's actually black ink. The red ran out and I put a black one in there. It works great, and it's going to be, because I'm trimming it after I pull off the backing, it doesn't even matter if it doesn't completely come off, but I would not use a regular ink pen, simply because any of it that stays on there when you wash that quilt is going to absorb into the fabric and it's going to ruin your quilt. So draw your circle in something that it can, you know, will disappear. And that way, when I cut my circles, I can set them in here. Well, that's how I started out, setting them in here. Then I reallocated my project cart to this project and set it all up in that. And this tub is almost full, and you know, it has to have 238. So we will have a larger tub soon for that. But in the meantime, that works great. It's my small pressing board. I've had this for like 20 years, and I used to be a smoker, so the covering was all nicotine stained and looked nasty. So recently I peeled it off of the cutting section and got rid of that nasty fabric and put fresh fabric on it, because I quit smoking a few years back and was able to take my fabric out of all the plastic tubs and the Ziploc baggies it was in, which was heaven. Any fabrics that I didn't keep in that, I mean, some of these blues are being used simply because they had nicotine stains in the fold, you know, in the creases, and I tried to gently wash them, and I soaked them, and I cut around the stains for me. I'll just use it for me. The bulk of my fabrics were in tubs, though, because I didn't want them getting damaged. That's a huge investment in our fabrics. But yeah, you don't have to throw these things out when you get it all stained up and nasty. Just, I rarely use this side, so, I mean, it has a few cut marks, but not a ton, because I keep cutting mats everywhere. So, mostly it's used for this, and it's handy. So, if you wanted, I would say take maybe a 1/4 inch board and cut it so that you have a handle on it. Make sure it's sanded smooth, and just pat it and wrap fabric around it, and then lay felt or something on this side if you don't want a cutting board on the back side. I did make one like that, but a giant one for my other cutting board, because I like convenience. Getting the ironing board out is kind of a pain in the butt, and it takes up the whole center of my room, so I don't use it if I can get around it. Okay,